A man curled under a tattered blanket, rain dripping through the alley's cracks. Beside him, a dog shivered against his chest. Just before dawn, the rumble of Harleys broke the silence. No one knew those engines would change everything. For the man, his loyal dog, and the town itself. Before we start today's story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. In the quiet town of Redhaven, the streets emptied fast after dark. But under the flicker of a broken streetlight, 38-year-old Travis Bell made his bed against the cold bricks of an abandoned hardware store. His dog Rusty, a scruffy mutt with honey-brown eyes, curled tight against him for warmth. Travis hadn't always been here. Years ago, he'd worked construction, framing homes for families he could never afford to join. But when layoffs came and debt followed, his world unraveled. Rusty was all he had left, a stray who had found him on a night when Travis thought he couldn't go on. Together they faced winters, hunger, and the silent judgment of townsfolk who passed by without a glance. Each morning Travis whispered, "We'll make it, boy," though he barely believed it himself. Then came the night engines thundered past the alley, not with menace, but with a promise neither man nor dog could have imagined. The bikers belonged to the Ironwood chapter of the Hells Angels. Hardened men with weathered faces and patches stitched by loyalty, they weren't strangers to whispers of fear. But this night something caught their eyes, a man shielding his dog from the rain with nothing but his jacket. Riker Doyle, the chapter captain, slowed his Harley, the rest of the convoy halting behind him. He saw Travis's eyes, tired but unbroken, and the dog trembling against his chest. For a moment, the alley was filled with silence, only the rain and the steady purr of engines. One rider muttered, "Just another drifter," but Riker shook his head. "No, that's a man holding on to the last thing he loves." With a nod, he dismounted, boots splashing in the puddles. Travis tensed, ready for harsh words, maybe worse. Instead, Riker crouched, extending a gloved hand not to Travis but to Rusty. The dog sniffed cautiously, then leaned into the touch. That was the moment everything began to shift. The next morning, Travis woke to the sound of engines again. He thought it was a dream until the bikes lined up outside the alley, chrome flashing in the sun. Rusty barked, tail wagging. Riker stepped forward, holding a bag of food. "For the dog first," he said. Travis hesitated but accepted, watching Rusty devour the meal. Another rider placed a thermos of coffee into Travis's hands. "You need this more than us." Travis felt a lump in his throat. Nobody had offered him kindness in months, maybe years. He muttered a hoarse "thank you," but the angels didn't linger for praise. They just nodded and rode off, leaving the alley strangely quiet. That night Travis sipped the last of the coffee and stroked Rusty's fur. "Guess not everyone forgot about us, huh, boy?" he whispered. Rusty's tail thumped against the concrete. Travis didn't know it yet, but that small act of compassion was just the beginning of something far greater. Days passed, and the angels returned. Each time they brought something. Blankets, canned food, even a vet checkup for Rusty arranged by one of the riders' wives. Travis resisted at first. Pride burned in his chest. He didn't want to be a charity case. But Riker saw through it. One evening, he sat beside Travis on the curb, their silhouettes outlined by the glow of neon signs. "You think strength is sleeping on concrete alone?" Riker asked, voice low. "Nah, real strength is letting someone stand beside you." Travis stared at the man, unsure how to respond. Rusty rested his head on Travis's lap, as if urging him to listen. For the first time in years, Travis felt seen, not as a failure, but as a man still fighting to hold on to dignity. When the angels roared off again, Travis whispered to Rusty, Maybe we ain't alone after all." Rusty licked his hand in quiet agreement. One cold night, Travis collapsed while trying to carry Rusty away from rising floodwater near the alley. His body gave out, hunger and exhaustion finally breaking him. When he awoke, he wasn't on wet concrete but in a warm bed at the Angels' Clubhouse. Rusty was curled safely at his feet, tail wagging. Around him, tough men with scarred hands set down bowls of stew and mugs of coffee. Travis struggled to sit up, shame on his face. "Why me?" he rasped. Riker answered simply, "Because Brotherhood ain't just patches and bikes. It's about never leaving a man or his dog behind." The room fell silent, the fire crackling in the hearth. Travis lowered his head, tears cutting through dirt on his cheeks. For the first time in years, he wasn't surviving alone. He was surrounded by men who had every reason to walk away, but instead chose to stand beside him. Travis woke to the smell of bacon and coffee in the Angels' clubhouse. Rusty had already made himself at home, tail wagging as bikers slipped him scraps under the table. Travis sat quietly, shoulders tense, still not believing this was real. Riker slid a plate in front of him. "Eat, no strings attached." Travis hesitated, then picked up his fork. The warmth of the food spread through his chest, melting a layer of ice he'd carried for years. Around him, laughter filled the air, men swapping road stories, boots thudding on wooden floors. For the first time, he wasn't invisible. Later, Riker motioned him outside. The bikes gleamed in the morning light, chrome catching the sun. "We're riding to the edge of town." "You're coming with us," Riker said. Travis shook his head. "I don't belong." Riker's gaze was steady. "Brother, you and that dog belong more than you think." The engines roared, and for once Travis didn't walk away. They rode out together, Travis in a pickup. Rusty perched proudly in the passenger seat, while the Harleys flanked them like guardians. Wind swept across the fields, the convoy drawing stares from townsfolk. Some looked fearful, others curious. Travis watched Rusty's ears perk up at the sound of the engines, his tail wagging like he understood this was no ordinary ride. They stopped at an open lot on the outskirts of town. Lumber was stacked, tools lined up, and volunteers already waiting. Travis blinked in confusion. "What's all this?" Riker stepped forward, his voice carrying over the engines. "You built roofs for others, Travis. Now it's time someone built one for you." Shock stole his words. Men he barely knew slapped him on the back. Women from town smiled, and Rusty barked happily. Tears pricked his eyes as he realized what was happening. The Angels weren't just feeding him. They were raising him a home. The first hammer swung and the lot came alive with motion. Leather vests worked alongside townsfolk, nails driven into wood with rhythmic thuds. Travis stood frozen, overwhelmed. Riker pressed a hammer into his hand. "So you're part of this too." Rusty trotted around the site, wagging at every worker as if blessing the effort. As walls rose, Travis's heart pounded. These men, feared, judged, misunderstood, were lifting beams for him, a man most people stepped over on sidewalks. Dana, the diner waitress who'd once slipped Travis extra coffee, arrived with food for the crew. She kissed Rusty's head and said softly, "Looks like you finally found your people." By dusk, the frame of a small house stood against the orange sky. Travis touched the wood with trembling fingers. "For me?" he whispered. Riker answered with a steady nod. "For you and the dog who never left your side." Building days turned into weeks. Travis worked alongside the Angels, his body sore but his spirit alive again. He rediscovered old skills, framing windows, laying shingles, steadying ladders. Each nail drove out a piece of shame he'd carried for too long. Rusty became the site's mascot, always underfoot, always adored. The townsfolk, once wary of the bikers, began to see something different. Mothers brought pies, kids waved from fences, and slowly suspicion melted into gratitude. One evening Travis sat on the unfinished porch, sweat dripping down his brow as the sun set. Riker handed him a cold drink and sat beside him. "See, you ain't broken. You just needed a place to stand again." Travis swallowed hard, unable to reply, but his silence said everything. Rusty climbed onto his lap, and for the first time in years, Travis looked at tomorrow not with fear but with hope. The day of the roof raising arrived. Dozens gathered as bikers hauled beams, townsfolk hammered shingles, and laughter mixed with the roar of engines. Rusty barked every time a cheer rose, as if announcing progress. When the last shingle was nailed, everyone stepped back. A modest but sturdy home stood where emptiness had been. Travis's hands shook as Riker placed a key in his palm. "Brother, you ain't sleeping in alleys no more." Travis hugged Rusty tight, tears spilling freely. The crowd cheered, some wiping their own eyes. Children ran up to pet Rusty, who basked in the attention. For Travis, it wasn't just a roof, it was dignity, safety, and a future. He looked at the angels, rough men with scars and patches, and whispered, "You didn't just give me a home. You gave me back my life." Riker clapped his shoulder. "That's what family does." Travis moved into the little house with only a backpack, a threadbare blanket, and Rusty's food bowl. Yet stepping across the threshold, it felt like walking into a kingdom. The angels had left small touches, a patched leather jacket hanging on a hook, a toolbox by the door, even a dog bed stitched with Rusty's name. Travis stood frozen, overwhelmed by the care poured into every corner. Rusty bounded from room to room, tail wagging furiously, finally curling up on the bed as if to say, "This is ours now." That night, Travis sat at the kitchen table, staring at the single light bulb glowing overhead. He whispered, "We're home, boy." Rusty's ears twitched at his voice, eyes soft with trust. For the first time in years, Travis didn't fall asleep listening for footsteps in alleys or rain leaking through tarps. He fell asleep to silence, warmth, and the steady rhythm of his dog's breathing against the sheets. But home wasn't just about walls. It was about rebuilding a life. The next morning, Travis found himself restless, pacing the porch until Riker's Harley pulled up. "You've still got skills, right?" Riker asked. Travis nodded. "Then come use 'em." He was brought to a build site across town, where the Angels had partnered with locals to repair a storm-damaged community center. Hammer in hand, Travis rediscovered the rhythm of honest work. Neighbors watched as he guided beams into place with steady hands. Some whispered, still cautious, but others offered nods of respect. Rusty sprawled nearby in the shade, watching his master work again. When the job wrapped for the day, a little girl handed Travis a flower. "For your dog," she said shyly. He tucked it behind Rusty's collar, his throat tight with gratitude. For the first time, Travis realized the Angels hadn't just built him a roof. They'd built him a doorway back into the world. As weeks passed, Travis's confidence grew. He woke early, brewed coffee on his new stove, and walked Rusty down streets where once he'd hidden in shadows. Townsfolk began greeting him, and he answered with a quiet smile. At the diner, Dana slid him a plate of pancakes on the house. "You're looking like yourself again," she said warmly. Travis blushed, unused to kindness. The Angels often stopped by his place, engines rattling the porch rails. They treated him like one of their own, though he wore no patch. One night, they invited him to a bonfire gathering. Flames roared, laughter echoed, and music hummed from an old radio. Rusty curled at Travis's feet as he listened to stories of the road. Losses, victories, loyalty. For the first time, Travis told his own how Rusty had found him on his darkest night, keeping him alive when he had nothing else. The bikers listened in silence, eyes glistening with respect. Yet storms test every new foundation. One evening, fire broke out in a nearby trailer park. Families scrambled, smoke choking the night. Travis grabbed Rusty and ran, but by the time he arrived, flames had already consumed half the row. The Angels were there too, engines blazing into the chaos. Without hesitation, Riker shouted orders, bikers hauling water, kicking doors, pulling children out into the night air. Travis dove into the smoke with two riders, breaking down a jammed door to save an elderly woman trapped inside. His lungs burned, but when she clutched his hand in thanks, something inside him ignited. By dawn, the fire was beaten back. Exhausted, soot-covered, Travis sat on the curb with Rusty's head in his lap. Riker clapped his shoulder. "See, brother, you're not just standing again. You're carrying others too." Travis wept openly, no longer ashamed of his tears. For the first time, he felt more than saved. He felt needed. The town's view of the angels shifted after that night. People who once whispered in fear now nodded in gratitude. Children waved at passing Harleys. Parents stopped to shake hands. Travis noticed the change most of all. Where he'd once been invisible, he was now greeted with warmth. At the diner, a man who'd once crossed the street to avoid him placed a hand on his shoulder. "Thanks for what you did." Travis nodded humbly, unsure how to respond. Rusty wagged at his side, soaking in pats from children who once recoiled from the stray. Back at his little home, Travis sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, the wood creaking beneath his boots. He stroked Rusty's fur and whispered, "Guess we're not ghosts anymore, boy." Rusty leaned into him with a contented sigh. For the first time, Travis felt something he hadn't in years. Not survival, not luck, but belonging. By summer, Travis's house had become more than shelter. It became a gathering place. Children stopped by to toss Rusty treats. Neighbors dropped in with pies, and angels often parked their bikes out front just to share coffee on the porch. Travis had never hosted anyone before. Now laughter filled the air where silence once reigned. At night, he sat on the steps with Rusty curled at his side, watching fireflies blink over the fields. He thought about the cold alleys, the rain-soaked blankets, the nights he almost gave up. Now warmth surrounded him in more ways than walls could hold. Still, he never forgot those who were still out there, sleeping in shadows, clutching their own scraps of hope. One evening he turned to Riker and said quietly, "We should build more than just one roof." Riker studied him, then smiled. "Now you're thinking like a brother." Travis's idea sparked action. With help from the angels, he began organizing small crews to repair porches, patch leaking roofs, and build ramps for elderly neighbors. Word spread quickly. Men once feared for their leather and tattoos were now known for hammers and heart. At each project, Rusty trotted happily among the workers, the unofficial foreman. Travis led with quiet determination, his confidence growing each day. At a town meeting, the mayor, once skeptical of the angels, stood up and said, "This town is safer, stronger, and kinder because of men we once misunderstood." Applause filled the hall, leaving Travis stunned. He wasn't invisible anymore. He was part of something bigger than survival. That night, around the clubhouse fire, Riker lifted his glass toward Travis. "You wanted a roof, brother. Look around. You built a town." The angels roared approval, their engines thundering in salute. Travis lowered his head, humbled, as Rusty barked proudly at his side. On the anniversary of his first night in the clubhouse, Travis invited everyone, townsfolk, bikers, children, to his little home. A banner stretched across the porch. 1 year, 1 roof, 1 family. Dana from the diner brought pies, kids carried flowers, and the angels rolled in, engines echoing like drums of celebration. Travis stood by the door, tears in his eyes, as people filled the yard. He raised a toast with shaking hands. "I thought I'd lost everything, but then I realized what I needed wasn't just a roof over my head. It was people to stand under it with me." The crowd erupted in cheers. Rusty barked joyfully, running circles as children laughed. That night, as lanterns lit the yard, Travis felt a peace deeper than walls could give. He wasn't the man in the alley anymore. He was a builder, a brother, a friend. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned, Riker found Travis sitting on the porch with Rusty asleep at his feet. The night was quiet, crickets singing in the distance. Riker handed him a small leather vest, perfectly sized for a dog. On the back was a stitched patch, guard dog of the angels. Travis laughed through tears as he slipped it over Rusty's back. The dog wagged his tail proudly, strutting around as the crowd cheered. "Looks like he's one of us now, too," Riker said with a grin. Travis wiped his eyes, overcome by the symbolism. It wasn't just about Rusty. It was about family. The kind you find, not just the kind you're born into. He leaned back, gazing at the stars, whispering to himself, "We made it, boy. We really made it." Seasons passed, and Travis's home became a symbol. People driving through Red Haven slowed down to see the house the angels had raised. For some, it was just wood and shingles. For others, it was proof that kindness can thunder louder than engines. On one quiet evening, Travis sat on his porch, Rusty's patched vest gleaming in the sunset. He thought of the alley, the rain, the night when he was nothing but a shadow. Now he was a man with a roof, a dog with a family, and a town that no longer looked away. He watched as the angels rode past, engines echoing like a promise, and lifted his hand in silent salute. Rusty barked once, tail wagging. And in that moment, Travis understood. Sometimes salvation doesn't come in silence or sermons. Sometimes it comes on two wheels, roaring down the road. Travis lost everything but a dog, and found family where he least expected it. The angels built him more than a roof. They built him a life.